Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Living Manna Church. Hi, I'm Pastor Dave Sain, Senior Shepherd here at Living Manna. It's Wednesday night. You know what that means? It's time for Bible study. I hope you're having a good week. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate that. If this is your first time joining us, excuse me, If this is your first time joining us here at Living Manna during our Bible study, please, please, please hit the subscribe button. If you want more content like this, you can hit the bell, notified every time we go live. And check out all of our archived information. It's on YouTube, or better yet, download the LMC app. You can get it free at the Google Play Store or your App Store, and you can be in contact with all the stuff that we do here at LMC. We've got chat rooms where people keep together, prayer rooms, prayer chats, and just overall all the information of everything that we do, including support. And we do really need your support. It's how we are able to continue to do what we do, all the equipment, all the electronics, everything we do to put all this information out. So if you're blessed by it, please ask Abba, petition, and see if this is something that you're willing to support. We would appreciate that. It means a lot to us here. All right, with all that commercial stuff out of the way, we got a great study for you for tonight. Before I do that, I do have one other commercial. This upcoming Friday night, we will not be having Hidden Manna. I know we just got back together on the 13th, but Brother Max is away. They're celebrating my niece's birthday. And so we won't be having Hidden Manna this upcoming Friday, but we'll be right back next week with another Hidden Manna, and lots of crazy stuff going on. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. But join us again on Saturday morning for our regular 1045 service. We look forward to that, and look forward to having you as part of LMC. Okay, with all of that now out of the way, let's open up with a word of prayer and jump right into it, because I got a lot of stuff to share with you for tonight. Abba, give us eyes to see, ears to hear, and a heart that's willing to obey. In the Master's name, amen. Okay, so we have been in a series. We actually just started a series. Let me pop this up so you guys can see that. We just started a series called The Name, the Mark, and the Number. And I originally intended to get into some more information on both the name and the mark today. But I'm sure that you guys have been, over the last 2 weeks watching everything that's going on in Israel. And we're watching not only history unfold before us, but we're watching prophecy being unfolded right before us. And I wanted to maybe, and even though even tonight's study is definitely going to be in line with the theme of the name, the mark, the number, a lot of end time stuff, I wanted to maybe try to put everything that's going on all around us in perspective, in a biblical perspective. I'm not a political commentator. I'm not a politician. I'm not a military guy, but to be able to put it in biblical perspective. And you guys, I hope, have been hanging around with me long enough to realize that I like the big picture. I like to understand what the story is about, because I think it really helps if you can get the bird's eye view. Then it helps you understand more of the details. And I love the details too. Details are wonderful. We're definitely going to get into the details. On quite a few things, but I want to do a little bird's eye view of everything that's going on. And again, to put it in perspective of the name, the mark, the number, because we're talking about these days. These things have occurred. These things are occurring. And I just want us all to have a groundwork, a frame of reference as we're watching the news and we're seeing the live feeds and you're watching your YouTube or however it is that you get your news. Obviously, I'm sure it is inundated with all of the information that's going on in Israel. And don't forget, guys, Israel is just one part. There is stuff going on all over the world. But what I can comment on from a spiritual perspective is what's going on with Israel. Because I'm sure you've heard things, you've heard people, all sorts of people online saying this is the Ezekiel Gog-Magog war. And if it is, boy, it's going to get a whole lot worse. And even if it isn't the Ezekiel Gog-Magog war, it's still going to get a whole lot worse. But if it is the Ezekiel Gog-Magog war, we have to be prepared, because what Ezekiel tells us is that Father puts hooks in the enemies of Israel to bring them to the land. So this thing is, if it truly is, if we really are living out that day, boy, things are going to get very, very scary very, very soon. And they are already. Things are happening. And I don't want you to be fearful, but I want you to be informed. I want you to realize that we are living this out. It is happening right in front of us. Of course, in days past, all the historic things that have ever happened, you and I watch it through a lens. We watch it through movies. We watch it through the internet. But here we are, we're living it. We are living it, and certainly what's going on in the Middle East right now is affecting the entire planet, and it has already affected us, and it will continue to affect us. So I want to sort of put that in perspective tonight with regards to the name, the mark, and the number. But for tonight, the title or the subtitle for tonight is called The Marvelous Work. The Marvelous Work. Now, what I'd like to do, let me just make this a little bit bigger so you guys can follow along. The notes, of course, are downloaded. You can download the notes. Go right to the YouTube description or go to the Living Manna Church app, and you can download the notes. Of course, they're going to be up on the screen in front of you as well. This way you can follow along with the different scriptures. I got a whole bunch of scriptures to share with you today. And of course, that's a picture of the Mount of Olives, which is really important for today as well. We're going to mention that a little bit. The coming of the Master. That's the Mount of Olives, the marvelous work. All right. Now, I want to start off with a definition. I know we haven't gotten into any scriptures yet, but I want to show you something really crazy, because I want to talk about patterns, because we've been talking about patterns forever, right? That's how Abba speaks to us, in patterns. And in order to understand the bigger picture, you got to know the patterns, because really everything's cyclical. And we've gone through this how many times already, that Abba tells us that he tells us the ending from the beginning. And if we can learn the patterns from the beginning, it helps us to see how Abba thinks and how things will unfold in the future, or for you and I right here today in the present. But I want to go through a definition for you. It's the definition of the word Ariel. And you're going to find out in just a few minutes that the writer Isaiah uses this word for Jerusalem, but it's a pun. It's a play on words. It's a phrase that has multiple definitions, and all of them are absolutely incredible. And all of them help tell the story of the bigger story, the bigger picture, if you would, of what this whole thing is about. And of course, of the marvelous work that our Abba is doing. So the word Ariel, and you can see on your notes, let me put this up here so I can do a little editing here. The word Ariel, up here on your notes, there's a couple different definitions for it. In your Strong's Concordance, if you guys want to look this up, it's 739, it's 740, and it's 741. And there's actually another addendum to that that I'll go through in just a second. In fact, it's number 2025, which is a word that sounds a lot like it. It's Ha'el, or Har'el. And it's definitely a play on words that's going on here. And you know what? Abba does this a lot. In fact, the Master does this a lot too. In his speaking, he does plays on words, says one thing when he's really talking about something else, and you need to be sensitive to that. It's just one of the ways that Abba speaks to us, for those that have eyes to see and ears to hear. So here is the word Ariel, and it means, now I want you to notice that there's three basic meanings, and they're all extremely, extremely important. First and foremost, it means Lion of God, or it can mean Lioness of God, but Lion of God. Now, right off the bat, you should have all sorts of, spiritual neurons firing, saying, oh, I know the Lion of God. It's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Yes, absolutely. So it can mean Lion or Lioness of God. It is a name that is applied or used in place of Jerusalem by Isaiah, and you'll see the verses in just a second. But it also has another meaning. It is the name of a chief of the returning exiles, those that have been in exile coming back to the land of Israel. The chief's name is Ariel. And just so you can follow me where I am, I'm right here. It is also an orthographical variation of Harel, which is what I just said, which is 2025, which is the altar of the temple, a reference to the altar, or the hearth, the altar, the place where the fire is done, of the temple. Now here's some more detailed definitions here. And one is that it's a proper name. Ariel, meaning Lioness of El, or Lion of El. It is also, as we see here, a name applied to Jerusalem. And you're going to see, we're going to get into Isaiah 29 in just a few moments. I'm skipping down here to, here is, and it also means the hearth or the altar of El, the place of fire of El. The altar, of course, being the place of fire. It is a proper name. Here's number 2. The proper name, a chief among the returning exiles. You can read this in Ezra chapter 8, verse 16. One of the chiefs of the returning exiles coming back out of Babylon, his name was Ariel. And finally, down here, as a proper name, the masculine, and let me get rid of all these lines here so you guys can actually see. Where was I? Okay. And translation, it means altar, hearth, and it gives you all sorts of different verses. Ezekiel 43:15 with the Ariel or the hearth of God. Ezekiel, like I said, 43:15 and 16. So altogether, summary, it means lion of God, or can mean lion of God. It can mean an altar of God, a hearth, an altar of God, an altar, the altar like at the temple, or it can mean the chief among the returning exiles. All 3 of those definitions apply here. And you're going to see that Abba, or the master, uses, or really his father, uses this pun through Isaiah to help us understand the bigger story, the whole story. And of course, that's what we want to do. We want to try to understand the bird's eye view of the story. So the notes are there. So you guys got these definitions. Of course, if you got your own straws and corners, you can just look these things up and find out for yourself what they mean. But let's go on. Tonight, I want to start with a verse that most of us would probably not go to or not realize is actually a huge part of the whole story. And really, the book of Isaiah is just magnificent. It is so chock full of the story of the coming Messiah, from cover to cover, from chapter 1 all the way to chapter 66. It reflects the story of the coming Messiah in such detail. It's a toss-up for me between the book of Daniel and the book of Isaiah. Which one's my favorite book of the prophets? I think Isaiah might just eke out Daniel just a little bit. Both magnificent books. So what I want to do is I want to read through some of Isaiah chapter 29, and I want to show you a pattern that we have been blind to, but not just us, a pattern that ancient Israel was blind to. Even as Isaiah is writing these words, the people are blind to the patterns that he is speaking about. Evidently, Isaiah wasn't, but the leaders, the people that should have known, did not know. The seers or the prophets, they did not know. So I want you to pay special attention to the yellow highlighted version. Of course, that's the PDP version. That's me giving some commentary or some context as to what's going on, as to try to help you understand what the bigger story is. And of course, any other color is just me highlighting that verse. So here's Isaiah chapter 29 and verse 1. And look at what it says. Woe to Ariel. To Ariel, the city where David dwelt. So right off the bat, you know that this is an analogy. This is a pun. Ariel means certain things. And here Isaiah is using the word Ariel to refer to Jerusalem. I mean, it tells us the city where David dwelt. That's a pretty easy one to figure out. So in one context, as we're reading through, not actually in the context, as we read through Isaiah chapter 29, it's telling us what's going to happen to Jerusalem. And of course, by Jerusalem, the extension is to the people of Israel, to the people of Judah, to the people of Jerusalem. What's going to happen to them? Jerusalem is a symbol of what's going to happen to the people. So if it happens to Jerusalem, it's going to happen to the people. And so here it goes, one more time. Woe to Ariel. And again, the definitions, I got the numbers there again, 739, 740, 41, and 2025, just like we just went over. The city where David dwelt. Add year to year, let festivals come around. Now, that's actually kind of a sarcastic way of Abba through Isaiah saying, just it's the same thing over and over. You're just going through the motions year after year, festival after festival. You're just doing the same things, but without understanding. That's the concept here. You guys say, so why is Abba using Ariel? Why not just say Jerusalem, where the city where David dwelt? Because of all the meanings of Ariel. Verse 2 says, and I shall distress. And I put in there, some other words that are synonymous with distress that might make us be better able to understand the context. I shall distress, or I shall trouble. I shall bring tribulation to Ariel. Now already your spiritual, spidey senses should be going off. Wait a minute, we're talking about tribulation to Ariel, to the city of Jerusalem, and of course, by extension, the city of Jerusalem, the people of Jerusalem. Verse 3 says, and I shall encamp against you all around. I shall lay siege against you with a mound, and I shall rage siege works against you. Wait a minute. We've heard this story before, and I'm just putting in there the reference of Luke 21. We're going to get to that in just a few minutes. But this is, if you listen, if you have commentaries, if you have like a Bible that has a commentary on it, some of these study Bibles have, commentaries underneath the actual passages. If you read through it, what most of the commentaries say is what Isaiah is talking about is the siege against Jerusalem. I think it's in 701 BC by Sennacherib. And I'm not, in fact, I do not think that this is what Isaiah is talking about. I get it. That's what the commentators think. That's what theologians have thought for a long time. But part of this whole verse is that some of this has been sealed, or a lot of this has been sealed, and our eyes are only opening to it now. And I'm going to show you some other proofs, scriptural proofs, that this is not about the 701 siege of Sennacherib. That's the whole thing where an angel kills 185,000. Ezekiel definitely talks about that. That's part of a bigger prophecy of both Israel and Judah. But in this case, I don't think that the commentators or the comments from some of the Bible scholars really fits. And you'll see why in just a couple of minutes. All right, so verse 3. Again, I shall encamp against you all around. I shall lay siege against you with a mound, and I shall rage siege words against you. Verse 4. And you shall be brought low, and speak out of the ground, and your speech shall be low out of the dust. It's talking about death, right? It's talking about death. When it says you shall speak low to the ground, and your voice shall be like a medium's speaking to the dead, right? You're just not supposed to go to a medium. And what do you go to a medium for? To speak to the dead. So he's talking about death that's going to be coming to Jerusalem. And your voice shall be like a medium's out of the ground, and your speech whisper out of the dust. Verse 5. But the crowd of those strange to you shall be like fine dust. In other words, lots of them. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots. It's analogous to the same type of phraseology that you would hear, like the sand of the sea or the stars of the sky. Lots and lots and lots and lots of stars. Lots and lots and lots of sea. Or excuse me, not sea. Lots of sand. Same sort of context here. So it says, but the crowd of those strange to you shall be like fine dust. Now he's talking about the nations, the Gentiles. So what he's talking about is siege by the nations, by the Gentiles. And Ariel is going to be brought down low, and distress, tribulation, and trouble is going to come her way. It's going to bring death to her. But the crowd, I'm going to read verse 5 again. But the crowd of those strange to you shall be like fine dust, and the crowd of the ruthless ones as chaff blowing away. And it shall be in an instant suddenly. It's going to come upon them quick. When it comes, it's going to come upon them quick. Verse 6. You shall be visited by Yah of hosts, with thunder and earthquake and great noise, with whirlwind and storm and flame of devouring. All of these are descriptions of just horrible destruction, right? Earthquakes and flame and wind, and that's like saying billows of smoke and fire. This is what's coming to Jerusalem. And again, this really isn't, it cannot be the Sennacherib 701 because that didn't happen. Our protected Jerusalem in that siege. This Jerusalem that's being spoken of here isn't protected. This Jerusalem is going to be distressed. It's going to go into tribulation and it's going to see death on a huge scale. Let's pick it up here at verse 7 and highlight it so you guys can see it. Verse 7 says, "Then the crowd of all the nations that are trampling Jerusalem, the Gentiles, like the sand of the sea or like the dust here, it says, who fight against Ariel." So again, he's using the word Ariel, but with the definitions we've already got of Ariel, we know he's talking about Jerusalem, but don't forget what Ariel can mean. One more time, let's just real quick go back a second. One more time. Lion of God, altar of God, chief among the returning exiles. Okay, so what context is he using it here? Well, it's to Jerusalem, and you're going to find out that Jerusalem is going to be an offering. He's calling them Ariel because just like on the altar, fire is going to come to them. They are going to become an offering, a sacrifice of sorts. But there's also going to have another play on words because there's another sacrifice, a marvelous work, another Ariel. That is the very Lion of the tribe of Judah, or the Lion of God. And he's going to mention it in a second. So one more time, verse 7. "Then the crowd of all the nations that are trampling Jerusalem, who fight against Ariel, or Jerusalem, even all who fight against her and her stronghold, and distress her, shall be as a dream of a night vision." Now, just for context, because you can read that and sort of, is he saying that the Gentiles are going to have a dream about this? No, he's saying Jerusalem, the people, to Ariel, to the house of Israel. This event is going to be like a dream, but not a good dream. We're talking about destruction and death and tribulation. Well, here's verse 8. Let's read on a little bit. It says, "And it shall be as when a hungry man dreams and sees. He eats, but he awakes, and his being is empty." So the analogy here is whatever's going to happen to Jerusalem, whatever trampling is going to go on, whatever death and everything that's going to go on by these Gentiles, that for the people of Jerusalem, in their dreams, it didn't happen. In their dreams, they're back in Jerusalem. But when they wake up, they realize they're in distress. They're in tribulation. And just a great analogy, a great poetic way of saying it, because I think we can all relate. You have a dream, and in a dream, if you go to bed hungry, and in a dream you're eating, and you're eating all sorts of things, but when you wake up, you're still hungry, right? It was just a dream. So it says one more time, "And it shall be when a hungry man dreams and sees, he eats, but he awakes, and his being is empty." He's talking about, I'm just going to give you the PDP version here so you understand some of the context. They're going to be dispersed. They're going to be scattered. And they're going to be dreaming of Jerusalem. And just historically, this has happened. This has happened for like the last 1,900 years. As a matter of fact, if you remember, for those of us that have been part of LMC for a while, when we did Passover years and years and years ago, we were using some of the things that our Jewish brethren use, the stories that they use. At the end of every Passover, or the way that they do the Seder, at the end of every Passover, as part of the prayers, it says, and next year, hopefully we'll do this in Jerusalem, or next year in Jerusalem. Now, that saying was a dream, because for 1,900 years, Judah is scattered all over the world in tribulation. Jerusalem has been destroyed. It is in the hands of the nations, of the Gentiles, who have come in and trampled it. And so for Judah, who's scattered all over the world, it is a dream. You sleep at night and you see Jerusalem. You see the land of Israel. You wake up in the morning and you're in Nazi Germany. You wake up in the morning, you're in medieval Spain. You wake up and you're in Europe. You're in a place of distress, of tribulation. And that's sort of the analogy that he's trying to get across to us. Of course, none of this stuff had happened yet, so he's speaking of it in a prophetic way. For you and I, this is history, so we can look back. Let's see. And he goes on to say, or as when a thirsty man dreams and see, he drinks, but he awakes and see, he is faint, and his being is longing. So that's that longing feeling that, you wish you could stay in the dream. You wish the dream was true, but it's not. You're still in a really bad situation. It says, thus shall the crowd of all the nations be who fight against Mount Zion. So what is the time among the nations? What's the destruction of Jerusalem going to be like? A bad dream. It's going to be a bad dream. At least from what Isaiah is telling us here, this is going to be a bad dream for the people of Ariel, for the house of Israel, for the house of Judah. This is going to be a bad dream. And look at verse 9. Now, I put it in orange there, so hopefully it pops out at you. He says, pause and wonder. Tell them, think about this. Obviously, this is very much so like we read things when the master says, he that has an ear, right? Him has an ear, listen, hear. And we know every time that we see something like that, Abba is really trying to tell us there's more there than meets the eye. You got to really use some wisdom, sometimes historical wisdom, sometimes what's gone on prior, biblical wisdom, just spiritual wisdom. You've got to really think about this because it doesn't mean exactly what you think it means. It means something even bigger. So he tells us, or Isaiah tells the readers of his day and us and you and I today, pause and wonder. If you have an ear to hear, listen. Now he says, blind yourselves and be blind. They are drunk, but not with wine. They stagger, but not with strong drink. For Yah has poured out on you the spirit of deep sleep and has closed your eyes, the prophets. So what he's referring to is all the stuff he just said about Ariel. This is prophecy. And he's saying the prophets don't see this. The prophets don't understand what's coming. It's being written here. It's right in front of them. And they still don't realize the magnitude of what Abba is saying here. He's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem by the nations and a time of great distress that is going to come upon them. That during the time of distress, it will be like a bad dream that you just cannot wake from. In fact, you want to stay asleep, but every time you wake, you're still in the same situation. And he's saying the prophets didn't see this. As a matter of fact, Abba's saying Abba gave them a spirit of deep sleep because of their rebellion, you'll find out in a minute. But he gives them a spirit of deep sleep and has closed the eyes of the prophets. They did not see this coming. So as Isaiah is writing it, the people, the prophets, the leaders, the seers in his day, and even beyond, all the way up to Messiah's day, did not see this coming, did not understand the full impact of these events. It says, and he has covered your heads, the seers. So the prognosticators, the guys that are looking at the stars and telling us what's coming, like the Magi, like Daniel. They didn't see it. They didn't understand it. And here's why. Verse 11. And the entire vision is to you like the words of a book or a scroll that is sealed. My goodness, we've talked about that how many times already out of the book of Daniel. As one example, this information is sealed. It's sealed to the prophets. It's sealed to the seers. And again, you're going to find out it's because they're rebellious. He's talking about this coming destruction of Jerusalem. This coming great tribulation of Jerusalem is closed. It's sealed up. The scroll is closed to the prophets and the seers. They do not understand. And don't forget, in the book of Daniel, it says the same thing, or he's told to do the same thing. But Daniel is told at some point, in the end, we've talked about this before, that Abba is going to give prophets. He's going to give men of wisdom that are going to be able to understand the unsealing of these words. But for right here, for right now, it's sealed. So one more time, it says, and he has covered your heads, the seers, verse 11, and the entire vision is to you like the words of a book that is sealed, which men give to one who knows books, saying, read this, please. In other words, he's talking about people that know the Bible, people that of his day and way beyond, talking about all the way up to Yeshua's time, Pharisees, Sadducees, etc., that should know, and they say, please read this. And he said, I am the prophets, the seers, the magi, the prophets, the seers. Well, I guess it would be magi. The prophets, the seers, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the priests. They said, I am unable, for it is sealed. Verse 12 then says, and then the book is given to one who does not know the books. So first you give it to the scholars, and they can't figure it out. They've got no idea what this really means and how this is going to unfold. And people that don't have really any knowledge, even if they read the book, they say, read this, please. And here I am. And he said, I have not known books. I don't know how to read. I don't understand this stuff. So he's really sort of painting a picture here for us of not only the prophecy that's come in the vision, but that people they got no idea what this actually means. No idea the magnitude of what it is that Isaiah is actually saying here. We are going to in a minute. All right, so here's verse 13. It goes on. It says, and Yah says, because this people, he means the prophets, the leaders, they have drawn near to me with its mouth, and with its lips they have esteemed me, and it has kept its heart far from me, and their fear of me has become a commandment of men that is taught. So again, I put Matthew 13 up there because this is a verse Messiah quotes. He's quoting Isaiah 29 and Matthew 13, which should let us know the Messiah is telling us the fulfillment of these verses isn't in 701 BC. Messiah is telling us in the Gospel of Matthew, then, right then and there is the fulfillment of these verses. These things are coming true right there as he is explaining the mysteries of the kingdom to the disciples, right? And he tells them, these people, their lips, they say it with their lips, their heart is far from me, and they teach instead of Abba's word, the commandments of men, which is the whole issue really of the whole New Testament or the whole four Gospels. Verse 14 says, so with all of this that they're doing, this rebellion that they don't see, the book is sealed to them. So what's Abba going to do? And this is, I'm going to underline this so you guys can see, because it's really the highlight thought for today. In the middle of all of this, in the middle of what's coming, this vision of the destruction of Jerusalem, this vision of the nations coming in and laying siege and trampling down Jerusalem, this vision of tribulation and hardship that is so bad, it's like it's a nightmare, it's a bad dream that you just don't want to wake up from, because every time you do, you're in the same distress, you're in the same tribulation, and it's going to be from generation to generation. And what does Abba do in the midst of this? What is connected to this vision of this upcoming destruction of Jerusalem? Verse 14 says, therefore see, I am again doing a marvelous work among this people, i.e. the title for today, a marvelous work. And what's the marvelous work? Well, I'll give you a little PDP version so we understand. The marvelous work is Ariel, not just Jerusalem as an offering, and we'll find out how Jerusalem is an offering in a second, a hearth, but Ariel, the Lion of God, and the one who is going to lead back those who have been scattered. I am doing a marvelous work among this people, the Messiah, also as an offering for all of us, a marvelous work and a wonder. So realize what was just said, even though it's not expressly said, you and I could look back and understand the marvelous work he's doing is sending Messiah. At the same time, Jerusalem is about to be destroyed. So one offering comes at the same time that another offering is coming. And Ariel can mean Jerusalem. It can mean the offering, the altar, but it also means the Lion of God. Amazing. To me, that is just words matter. Meanings matter. If you change that word Ariel and you just put Jerusalem in there, we've missed the whole meaning of all of this. We missed the pun that Abba is giving to us. Abba hides things. And here's one way he's hiding it. He's hiding it in a pun. This is how Abba seals the truth. He hides it in this verbiage. And until we've got eyes to see it, and it's not that we're anything that we've got eyes to see, it's until Abba gives us eyes to see it, you're just not going to see it. That's just the way it is. As he said to the leaders before, Abba gave them a spirit of sleep. Abba didn't allow their eyes to see. Abba sealed the book and they couldn't understand the vision. All right, so one more time. Where are we? Verse 14 again. Therefore, see, I am again doing a marvelous work among this people, a marvelous work and wonder, and the wisdom of their wise men, the priests, the teachers, the rabbis, shall perish, and the understanding of their clever men shall be hidden. They won't understand the mysteries of the kingdom. Verse 15. Woe to those, here I am, guys. Woe to those who seek deep to hide their counsel far from Yah, and their works are in the dark. This should really sort of bring to your mind, because really we're talking, hopefully you realize we're talking about the story of Messiah here right now. He's the marvelous work. And what happens? He reveals the mysteries that are hidden. But there are also men in his day who the book is sealed to them. They do not understand. They're doing the commandments of men, just like Messiah said, instead of the commandments of Elohim. And they're doing their works in the dark. Remember the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 5, and chapter 3, verse 19? Men loved darkness. Messiah's light came and drove away the darkness, but men love darkness. This is a reference to what's coming. This is, again, prophecy of the coming Messiah. They say, who sees us? Well, what darkness did men do? What thing did the men who the scriptures were sealed to them, their eyes were closed, what did they do in darkness? They plotted Messiah's murder. And I'm sure lots of other people's murders too. Because if you're going to do it to one guy, you've done it many, many other times before. They plotted the murder of Messiah. They plotted the murder of Lazarus as well. So again, if you did it once, you did it twice, you did it many, many other times as well. And they're saying, Abba doesn't see us. Doesn't matter. Who sees us and who knows us? How perverse of you. And so this is wrong, right? So what they think Abba doesn't see, Abba does see. And so why is Abba going to do this to Jerusalem? Because of this. Because their eyes were closed off to it. They refused to see. They loved darkness rather than light. They plotted evil. They were going to kill the Messiah, even though it winds up to be the marvelous work of Elohim, his death. They still plotted evil in darkness. And this is a really important verse, verse 16. How perverse of you. Should the potter be reckoned as the clay? Should what is made say of its maker, he did not make me? And what is formed say of him who formed it, he did not understand? Think about what is actually being said here. He's saying these people that love darkness, these people whose eyes are sealed, that Abba is going to use them to bring about this prophecy, this marvelous work that's going to be done. He's going to use even their evil, even their darkness, to bring about the offering of Messiah, Ariel, the very Lion of God, and Ariel, the offering of Jerusalem, bringing on a time of terrible tribulation for all the people of Israel. Abba would even use the darkness of unrepentant Israel in this day to do what it is that this marvelous work that Abba is doing. All right, so there's the text with some addendums for the PDP version. Let's look at this as a chart. All right, let's look at it as a summary story of everything we just read, with understanding what we understand now, that this is a prophecy of the coming Messiah. So this is a summary, and let me go up here. So you know me, I love charts. So what's the first thing? We know Ariel's Jerusalem, right? That's right off of verse 1. We now know that Ariel is going to be sacrificed like on an altar, which is what Ariel means. It's a play on words. So Jerusalem is going to be offered up. And it also, however, means return from exile, the name of the person who returns from exile. We'll see how that pans out a little bit later. We now know, number 2 on the list, that the nations lay siege to Jerusalem, and it causes great distress, great tribulation. We know now that the prophets were blinded. The seers were blinded. The book was sealed to them. Even the most intelligent of them, the book is sealed to them. And what is about to happen to them is going to be equated to a terrible, terrible nightmare. And yet, in the midst of all of this, Abba is going to do a marvelous work. The work Ariel was made for. Again, this is a pun. It's the work Jerusalem was made for, but it is also the work of the Lion of God. Both of them are offerings. In fact, one's going to wind up to be the offering for sin. Another one's going to wind up to be a burnt offering. And you'll see why in just a few seconds or just a few minutes. All right, so the question then is, if that's what this story tells us, and then we're just reading chapter 29, right? We can just go on and read and read and read. But what happens next? Well, if you read the rest of the book of Isaiah, it'll tell you what's going to happen next. But just for tonight, question mark here. What happens next? Well, my assumption is if Abba's doing a play on words, that the Ariel of Jerusalem is going to be given up on an altar, destroyed, laid siege. The Ariel of the Lion of God is going to be given up on an altar as a marvelous work. And the Ariel, the one who returns from exile, is going to come back. And I'm not saying that's next, but in the story, I'm assuming that's where the story is going, if you understand the definitions and why Abba chose with Isaiah to use the word Ariel. So here's two points down here. Point number 1, this pattern, this very same pattern that we see here, we're going to see it in multiple places in just a couple of minutes. This pattern appears again and again and again. And each time it appears in different books, each book gives us a little bit more detail than the book before it. So from chapter 29, we don't know what happens after the marvelous work. So that's going to be given to us in another book. But here's a question. Number 2. If the offering of Ariel, that is Jerusalem, and actually also Messiah, the Lion of God, if the offering of Ariel is violent, is deadly, brings tribulation, nightmares, then what will the return of Ariel be like? If one was so horrific, what will the other? If one brings tribulation and the play on words is the leader who brings the people out of exile, what happens when Ariel returns? Great tribulation. Of course, I got some question marks there just to kind of leave it on a little bit of a cliffhanger for you. But I hope by now you realize where we are headed here. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at a couple of things here. Saul confirms the idea that Ariel, Jerusalem, the house of Judah, is given up as an offering. So Messiah, obviously, we know the idea that Messiah is an offering, right? Well, Jerusalem winds up to be too a sacrifice, if you will. Maybe not an offering for sin, but a sacrifice for a purpose to bring about Abba's marvelous work. So Messiah dies to bring about Abba's marvelous work, and Jerusalem gets destroyed to bring about Abba's marvelous work. Listen to what Saul says. Now, with that in mind, listen to what Saul says, and you're going to see something totally different here in Romans chapter 9, verse 14. Saul says, "What then shall we say? Is there unrighteousness with Elohim? Let it not be. For he says to Moses, I shall favor whomever I favor, and I shall have compassion on whomever I have compassion. So then, it is not of him who is wishing, nor of him who is running." So he's saying, listen, you can't just wish, and do what you want to do and think that God's going to use you. It just doesn't work that way. But it is of Elohim who shows favor. I know that's probably not what a lot of people want to think. Be grateful that we have the favor of Elohim. It goes on to say, verse 17, for the scripture, so another example citing the same thing. For the scripture says to Pharaoh, and I underline this and I put the word Ariel in there so you see where I'm going with this. For the same purpose, in speaking to Pharaoh, I have raised you up, meaning Pharaoh, but I'm putting in there Ariel. Ariel being Jerusalem, and obviously Ariel being Messiah, the Lion of God. For the same purpose, Abba has raised you up, Ariel, to show my power in you, and that my name be declared in all the earth. So everybody wonders, Pharaoh got a bum deal. Listen, Abba used him. Abba used him to do something wonderful that the whole world has heard about for thousands of years. That's what Abba did. That was the marvelous work. There was an offering. Something else had to be sacrificed to bring favor to a larger group of people. And I know you may twist over in your mind with all that, but that's it. That's what Saul is saying. Verse 18 says, so then he favors whom he wishes, and he hardens whom he wishes. Now we're going to find out that he favors, he hardens those who already have a hard heart, like the Pharisees, like the Sadducees, like what Isaiah is speaking about. Those who the book is sealed to them. Their eyes are closed. Their hearts are closed. They're doing things in darkness. So the book is sealed to them. So what does Abba do? He uses them. He uses them to bring about a marvelous work. So then he favors whom he wishes, and he hardens whom he wishes. Then you shall say to me, why does he still find fault? For who has resisted his counsel? And here's his answer. Who are you? Who are you, O man? Meaning blind prophets, meaning people that live in the darkness. You can wish away, you can wish faith, you can wish being close to Abba, but if his favor's not there, if your obedience isn't there, well, he'll use you anyway. He'll just use you the way he wants to use you. He says, but who are you, O man, blind prophets, to talk back to Elohim? And look at what he's quoting. Look at what he's quoting, guys. This comes out of Isaiah chapter 29, the verses we just read, 15 and 16, or 16 and 17. Look at what it says. Shall that which is formed say to him who formed it, why have you made me this? Does not the potter have authority over the clay from the same lump to make one vessel for value and another not for value? Now, I know this is a tough concept to get, but this is important to the whole storyline, because we just finished reading that Abba is telling us he's going to use Ariel as an offering. He's going to use Jerusalem as an altar, as a sacrifice, and he's going to do a marvelous work in doing it. Verse 22, and if Elohim, and so here it is. Here's the summary of it all. And if Elohim desiring to show wrath. Wrath on who? Because what's he really talking about in Romans 9 here? Jerusalem, Israel, Judah. And if Elohim, desiring to show wrath on Jerusalem and to make his power known, just like with Pharaoh, to the entire earth, with much patience tolerated the vessels of wrath, the blind who could not read, the ones who the book was sealed to, the ones who plotted in darkness, the ones who created commandments that had nothing to do with Elohim, but were really the commandments of men. Abba puts up with them for a long time to get it to this point. To do what? To pour wrath out on them. That is on Ariel. Saul is telling us or giving us the definition or the explanation of Isaiah 29. He's telling us what's going to happen or what actually has already happened. Prepared for destruction. I'm sorry, I lost my spot there. With much patience tolerated the vessels of wrath, prepared for destruction. He's going to use them. He's going to use Jerusalem, Ariel, as an offering. Or let's say it this way. He's going to use Ariel as an example. An example of what? An example of wrath. That's what he's saying here. One more time, guys. And if Elohim, desiring to show wrath on Jerusalem and to make his power known to the earth, with much patience tolerated the vessels of wrath, like he tolerated Pharaoh, prepared for destruction as an example of what's to come to the nations, and that he might make known the riches of his glory, the marvelous work with Messiah, the other Ariel, on vessels of compassion, which he had prepared beforehand for glory, even whom he called not only of the Jews, but also of the nations. Saul's telling us Jerusalem, the house of Israel of his day, is going to be lost, a sacrifice, an example to the world, just like Pharaoh was an example. And just like Pharaoh was an example, and great blessing came on the house of Israel, Israel and the wrath that's going to come upon it, great blessing is going to come on both the Jew and the people of the nations. Wow, we got another piece of the story. Another piece of the story that we didn't actually get in Isaiah 29, but you can see through the verbiage he's using here, he's speaking about Isaiah 29, this marvelous work that Abba is doing. It is a marvelous work that something can have wrath poured out on it, and at the same time have blessing poured out somewhere else. I think later on in chapter 11, Saul says, oh, the wonders of Elohim, that through great wrath comes great compassion. So this idea of destruction of Jerusalem, this idea of Ariel being destroyed is actually Abba's marvelous work to get this message, the message of Messiah, out to the rest of the world. And as an example, to show the rest of the world what Abba did to them. And if what Abba did to them is true and is the example, it is supposed to be an example of the nations. And Saul warns us about this later on in Romans chapter 11. You know, don't be haughty against the Jews. You can be removed the same way. The same thing that can happen. And it's going to happen to the nations. If Abba did what he did to Jerusalem, we're talking around 70 AD and also 130 something AD. If Abba did that to them as an offering, as an example to the world of this is what the wrath of Elohim looks like, if you reject, if you're in darkness, if you rebel, if the book stays sealed to you, if you reject the Messiah, if this is what happened to Israel, the priests, the people of the book, what's going to happen to the nations in the future? And that gets us a lot closer to what's going on right here, right now, today. All right, let's move on a little bit. Here's the same pattern, same exact pattern that we just finished seeing in Isaiah 29. Here's Luke 21:20. These are the words of the master. This pattern appears all over the place, but here's just one other spot. Luke 21:20. So Messiah is giving them what's going to happen in the end. So the death, the resurrection, from the timeline of the story already happens, but he's telling it to them in the future. They're going to go out, they're going to go tell the gospel, they're going to be hated, yada, yada, yada. Messiah's death, life, the marvelous work of Ariel, the lion of Elohim, is done. His sacrificial death as the Passover lamb is done. And then he tells them, and when you see Jerusalem, Ariel, the one from Isaiah 29, when you see Jerusalem burning like an altar, they will become an altar, a sacrifice. Well, Saul just finished telling us Jerusalem's sacrifice is going to bring blessing to the world. Wrath on Jerusalem will bring blessing to the world. And when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, guys, this is almost verbatim Isaiah 29. So Isaiah 29, if Messiah is quoting Isaiah 29 here in Luke 21, this has nothing to do with 701 BC. This has to do with 70 AD and 132 or 136. I forgot what the date is. I'll show it to you. I know I got it in the notes here somewhere. Anyway, he says, so when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, the nations, Rome in this particular case, then know that its laying waste is near, its time of distress and mourning. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let those who are in the midst of her go out, and let not those who are in the fields enter her. Because these are the days of vengeance to fulfill what has been written. Been written where? In Daniel, in Ezekiel, in Jeremiah, in Isaiah, in Zechariah, and in many, many other places. This pattern appears over and over and over and over again. And woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing children in those days. For there shall be great distress. Exactly what Isaiah 29 said. Great distress in the earth and wrath upon this people, Ariel, the people of Jerusalem. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, which is exactly what we just finished reading, and be led away captive into all nations. Now, we know historically he's talking about the destruction of the temple and then the final destruction of Jerusalem some few years later. So being captive into the nations has been going on for about the last 18 to 1900 years. That's the gap. That's the gap you don't understand or you don't see in what Isaiah is talking about in 29. Here, because we're at the end of the story, we can see the gap because we know Judah, this is exactly what happened to Judah, and the Jews were scattered all over the world. He goes on to say, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword. Let me make this bigger for myself. They shall fall by the edge of the sword. They shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem, Ariel, shall be trampled underfoot for about 1900 years. It will be a nightmare for the Jewish people. Every Passover scattered all over the world for 1900 years, they will say, next year in Jerusalem, and it was a dream. And next year in Jerusalem, and it was a dream. And persecution and pogrom and all of the horrible things that they went through throughout all of history. Another study for another day. Jerusalem shall be trampled underfoot by the nations until, so there's an ending to this, until the times of the nations are filled. So if wrath is poured out on unbelieving Ariel, what's going to happen at the end of the age? When Ariel is on his way back, or Ariel, there's a part of Ariel that's returned already. Let's take a look. I'm not saying Messiah, but we'll get there in a second. It says, and there shall be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and on the earth anxiety of nations. Now the roles are reversed. Now it's the nations who are going to have anxiety. Now it's the nations who are going to have tribulation. Just like the example or the sacrifice of Ariel, which is the example to the nations of what's coming. Now Messiah has given us a definition of what's coming. In bewilderment at the roaring of the sea and agitation, men fainting from fear at the expectation of what is coming on the earth, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. So what does it look like when the powers of the heavens are shaken? War, death, disease, financial ruin, all sorts of things. And then, in the midst of all of this, just like what happened to Jerusalem, but is now happening to the nations, then they shall see the son of Adam, Ariel, but this is the lion of God, the lion of the tribe of Judah. They shall see the son of Adam coming in a cloud with power and much glory. And when these matters start to take place, what matters? This is important. We get what he's saying. When these matters start to take place, what matters? He's talking about from verse 24 to verse 26. When you see Jerusalem captive among the nations, and you see anxiety among the nations, the roaring of the sea, when you see the powers of heaven shaken, war, death, and everything else on a scale unbelievable, and when you see the sign of the son of Adam coming on the clouds with much glory, when you see these matters beginning to take place, look up. Look up with your heads, because your redemption, the redemption for Ariel, the redemption for Jerusalem, the redemption for Israel, the redemption for Judah draws near. See, we read that very often from a Gentile Christian perspective, but he's not talking to Gentile Christians. He's talking to Judah here. Isaiah 29 is talking to Judah. He's talking to the whole house of Israel, but he's talking to Judah. And that's who the master is talking here. That's the redemption that's coming. That's what the new covenant's about. It's a covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. You and I may be grafted in as the nations, which is the wonderful blessing of the original wrath poured out on Jerusalem. This is now wrath being poured out on the nations and the establishment of Jerusalem, the establishment of Ariel, the establishment of Israel, and an establishment of Judah to be connected together as one. All right, so here's another chart. I want to compare Luke 21 and Isaiah chapter 29. Isaiah 29, again, we already saw Isaiah 29. Ariel, Jerusalem is sacrificed like on an altar. And skip the return from exile. That's at the end. And look down here. A marvelous work is done, Messiah's death and resurrection. But another marvelous work is done according to Saul, because if Abba's wrath is poured out, it means blessing to both the Jew and to the Gentile. This is what Ariel, Jerusalem, this is what Messiah was made for. This is why Jerusalem is to be surrounded. Abba will use, even though he's had patience with, despite their darkness, he's going to use it to bring about a marvelous work. And what happens? The nations lay siege. What happens in Isaiah chapter 29? The nations lay siege and distress and tribulation comes. What happens here? Distress and tribulation come. Now, you and I are getting more information because it's being unsealed. We're looking back and we're able to begin to put all of this together. But in the original Isaiah 29, what then begins to happen? Well, the prophets were blinded. The book was sealed. Terrible nightmare for almost 1900 years for Judah. And what happens here? The nations trample Jerusalem, and it's a terrible nightmare for Jerusalem, for the Jews, for the people of Judah, for about 1900 years, even though the marvelous work has been done. Even though Saul tells us the gospel now, because of the destruction of Jerusalem, because of what Messiah has done, is now going to go out to the world. And what we said before, if we look back here, we said before, well, what happens next? Well, we assumed Ariel returns. Well, what does Messiah tell us in Luke 21? He tells us Ariel returns. So the gospel goes out to the nations and to the Jews, all those who are willing to believe. But at the end, it's wrath upon the nations. Nations full of anxiety and fear at the things that are coming. And who is being restored, brought back into existence? First, Ariel, that is Jerusalem. That has come into existence about the last 70 years or so. at least as a Jewish state. It's back in existence. We are coming to that time when you begin to see these things happen. Look up. Now, look up may mean, for us it's been like the last 70 years, but we are also seeing something else happen now that is absolutely amazing and petrifying at the same time. So here's that pattern one more time. Totally different book, but you're going to see the same pattern. I'm not going to put it in the chart this time. I didn't have enough room to do a chart, but you can follow me along and you can see where the pattern is. This is the book of Zechariah. Part of the ending of chapter 13 and I don't know, like the first 12 or 13 verses of chapter 14. But you're going to see the same pattern that we just finished reading in the chart prior to. In this chart. Same pattern from Isaiah 29 and Luke 21. And by the way, this is the same pattern in Matthew 24. So once you get this pattern down, Pat, it's so much easier to understand the abomination of desolation. So much easier to understand the language that's being said in the time frame between different events as they occur. But here's Zechariah chapter 13 and verse 6. And one shall say to him, what are these wounds in your hands? Well, he's talking about the coming Messiah. He's talking about the sacrifice, the wounds in his hands, right? So what are these wounds in your hands? The marvelous work. The PDP version helps us put the connections. And he shall say, that is the Messiah, because I was struck at home by blind prophets to whom the word is sealed. Those who loved me. And they said they loved him, but they lived in darkness and they wound up striking him. O sword, awake against my shepherd. Awake against Ariel. The other Ariel, not just Jerusalem, but it's going to be Jerusalem in a second. Awake against the shepherd, the lion of the tribe of Judah, the lion of God. Against the man who is my companion, declares Yah of hosts. Strike the shepherd and let the sheep, the house of Judah, be scattered. Now, I know this is used to refer to, Messiah gets taken and the disciples run their way, but that's only a little microcosm of it. The macrocosm of that prophecy is strike the shepherd, have the marvelous work done. And what happens to the whole house of Judah? 40 years later, they get scattered all over the place. That's the prophecy. That's the bigger picture. But I shall turn my hand upon the little ones. This is the disciples, both Jew and Gentile. So because of being struck, because of the shepherd and the scattering of those after the shepherd comes, he is also going to put his hand on the little ones. For that time frame, about 1900 years, you're going to find out the scattering of the scattering. There's also the message going out to both Jew and Gentile for those who have a heart to hear it. Let me see. Oh, I'm right here, guys, if you want to. Lost my spot there for a second. I think sorry, guys. I went too far. Zechariah, and here it is. And it shall be throughout all the soil. All the soil of what? Jerusalem, declares Yah, that 2/3 therein are cut off and die. He's talking about the siege of Jerusalem. And it wasn't just Jerusalem, it was the whole house of Israel. It was, at the time, the whole house of Israel, some 40-odd cities. Rome came in and destroyed them all. And this is telling us it shall be throughout all the soil, all the land of Israel, Jerusalem in particular, declares Yah, that 2/3 in there are cut off and die. The siege of Jerusalem, 70 AD. Zechariah is talking to us about the siege of Jerusalem after the death of Messiah at around 70 AD. And 1/3 is left therein to do what? To begin to live the nightmare, the siege of the Gentiles. And I shall bring the 1/3 into fire, 1900 years of the sword, of mourning, of distress, of saying next year in Jerusalem and waking up in Nazi Germany. That's the distress. And refine them as silver is refined. Think about what he's saying here. This is what Saul means when he says the gifts and the callings of Yah are without repentance. Even though they may be unrepentant, Abba's still going to use them. He's still going to have his hand on them. He's still working this out because this is a Jewish story. This is a story of the house of Israel. It goes on to say, I'll refine them as silver is refined and try them as gold is tried. I'm right here, guys, in the blue. Then, at some point, they shall call on my name, and I shall answer them. I shall say, this is my people, the people who have been scattered, while they say, Yah is my Elohim. See, a day shall come for Yah, and your spoil shall be divided in your midst, and I shall gather all the nations to battle against Jerusalem. So we just finished reading about 2/3 being destroyed in Jerusalem and the land, 1/3 still alive. That's around 70 AD. But what happens after that? Some 50 years later, in 132 AD, Jerusalem is utterly destroyed, and its name is changed to Capitolina. And that name Capitolina sticks with it. Judah is changed. The name is changed from Judah or Israel. It is changed to Syria, Palestina by the Romans. The name is changed of the city and the land. The original inhabitants are driven out by the sword, scattered all over the world, and it becomes, here it is, guys, it becomes known as Palestine. Palestine. See how the connection really is with what's going on today? It goes on to say, this is my people. Verse 14, see the day shall come. I already read all that. Let's start verse 14 again. See, a day shall come for Yah, that your spoil shall be divided in your midst, and I shall gather all the nations to battle against Jerusalem, 132 AD. And the city shall be taken this time, totally taken. And the houses plundered, and the women ravished. Half of the city, now named Capitolina, Ariel, shall go into exile, scattered into the nightmare. But the remnant, a small group of people, the followers of Messiah, shall not be cut off from the city. And there were certainly Jews that were still left, a very small amount after that. And after a while, there were no Jews in Jerusalem for thousands of years. On and off, there's been small groups. And every time they went back to Jerusalem, they got slaughtered. They got slaughtered by the Christians. They got slaughtered by the Muslims. They got slaughtered by the nations over and over and over and over again. That's just history. Cannot be refuted. That is exactly the way it turned out. So here's chapter 14 of Zechariah, the continuation of that story, because here's the continuing pattern. And Yah shall go forth. When? About 1900 years later, after the time of the Gentiles closes, after the time of Abba's compassion upon both Jew and Gentile to hear the marvelous work of Messiah, the Lion of God. And he shall fight against those nations. What nations? The nations that have trampled Jerusalem. Now, I'm sorry, guys, we're talking about Christianity and we're talking about Islam. Both of those Gentile nations, which makes up all the nations of, sorry guys, which makes up all the nations of the world, they have trampled Jerusalem. And how is he going to fight against them? This is really important, guys. How is he going to fight against them? As he fights in the day of battle. Well, what battle? Well, there's Jericho with Joshua. Well, how did he fight? You could say, well, Abba, they blew the shofars and the walls fell down. But what they have to do after that? They had to go in there and kill. It was war. Abba used his people for war. During King David's day, Abba had great victories. How did he have great victories? He used Israel. He used Israel as a sword against their enemies. Samson, he used a person to go in and fight. Abba uses his people to fight in the day of battle. That is Abba fighting. I'm not saying Abba's not going to do some crazy, incredible things all in and of himself, but he uses his people. That is how history has played out throughout the Bible. Every victory is a victory of the people of Elohim going out with swords and spears and slingshots, etc., 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 etc. That's how Abba wins the battle. He uses his people who go out and fight. And he's with them, no doubt, but he uses them. So what's going to happen at the end of the age? At the end of the time of the nations? He is going to begin to fight against the nations that have rebelled, that have trampled Jerusalem, as he fought before in the days of battle. And in that day, when we begin to see this, we ought to look up. When men's hearts begin to fail them for fear, for all the craziness that's going on, we need to look up. And in that day, his feet, the Mashiach's feet, the Messiah's feet. It's not Abba's feet, it's Messiah's feet. Messiah is the very sword of Elohim. Shall stand upon the Mount of Olives, the picture that we got right in the beginning, which faces Jerusalem. What's the story? Where is the story going to end up? In the same place it began in Isaiah 29, Ariel. So there's got to be an Ariel at the end of the age. Is there an Ariel today? There sure is. Now, I know the Islamic world will call it Al-Quds. The Roman world called it Capitolina, but it now bears the name and is considered the very capital of the house of Israel. There must be a Jerusalem when Mashiach returns. And what do we got today? Jerusalem, surrounded by its enemies. And what is Abba doing? He is using his armies against the nations, against those who have trampled Jerusalem for some 1,900 years. And on the Mount of Olives shall be split in two from east to west, a very great valley. And half of the mountain shall move toward the north, and half of it to the south. And you shall flee the valley of my mountain. For the valley of the mountain reaches to Atzal, and you shall flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah. This is associated. So if we are in this day, if this is what's happening right now, if truly Abba is putting hooks in the nations to bring Gog and Magog back, there is an earthquake coming of unimaginable proportions. I think global. I can show you some other verses about this, but definitely in the Middle East. As in the days of Uzziah, sovereign of Judah. Excuse me. Sorry, guys, a little dry there. It says, next verse, and Yah, my Elohim, shall come. Well, how does Yah come? He comes through the Son. He comes through the Mashiach, the sword of Elohim, and all the set-apart ones with you. He's talking about resurrection. So now we know that at the end of the age, this is where the battle of all the nations, this is the wrath upon the nations. What comes at the end? Look up. For the redemption of the house of Israel and the house of Judah and Jerusalem is near. The set apart ones with you, verse 6, and in that day it shall be, there is no light. It is dark. Now this is a pun. This is another pun. Realize there's a pun here. The day of Yah is a dark day. This is going to be bad. This is going to be very bad. The roll up to this is going to be bad, very bad, full of death and destruction and mayhem and you name it. We were watching it now on TV, but it's going to be bad. It is a day that is dark. Let me see this, guess. It is a day, there is no light. It is dark. And it shall be one day which is known to Yah, neither day nor night, but at evening time there shall be light. So it's a play on words, because how can it be dark? Day of Yah is dark, and the day of light and the day of Yah be light. What it's saying is it's dark metaphorically. It's dark. This is a dark, dark day, but it is also a day that is bright with the light. Whatever is going to happen that precedes the coming of the Son of Man is going to light up the sky, that if it's in the middle of night, it's going to look like day. That's kind of what it's saying right here. But at evening time, there shall be light. Verse 8. This, and again, we talked about the Son of Man and the constellation and all, and what could possibly that mean? Whatever it means, it's going to be pretty impressive, and the whole world is going to see it. And in that day, it shall be that living waters, eternal life, the tree of eternal life will flow from Jerusalem. Half of them toward the eastern sea and half of them toward the western sea, in summer as well as in winter. And Yah shall be sovereign over all the earth. In that day there shall be one Yah, and his name one. This is talking about the restoration of the true meaning of the Shema, Deuteronomy 6. That will be restored to the world, what the Shema, it will be restored to the house of Israel and to all the people that follow him, what the true Shema means. And the Shema is important, most important verse in all the Bible. It is a thing that is supposed to guard our minds. So what is the day? So we've got the parallels there. This is the same parallel. Messiah comes. He's got wounds on his hands. The sheep are scattered all over the world. Great destruction comes. 2/3 of them die at the destruction of Jerusalem. After the destruction of Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem winds up being destroyed. Most of them die. A certain portion go out into captivity. They go out into captivity until the time that Abba deals with the nations that trampled Jerusalem. We're talking about 70 AD, 132 or 136. I forgot what the date was of the Bar Kokhba rebellion, the destruction of Jerusalem, the changing of the name from Jerusalem to Capitolina, the changing of the name of Israel from Israel or Judea to the name of Palestinia, Syria, Palestinia. This is all history, irrefutable history. This already happened. This is what we are reading about here. This is the timeline. And what's the difference between that destruction, the offering up of Ariel, and the restoration of Ariel? Well, it's been about 1,900 years, close to it, 1,800 and something years, but still a long time in between verses that are right next to each other. Two different aspects of destruction, ending with Abba at the end of the age, fighting the way he has always fought before. And what's going on now? Abba is fighting the way he has always fought before. He is using his people as there is now a Jerusalem today. And you can say, well, they're unrepentant. Yeah, so what? Jerusalem's been unrepentant. The Jews have been unrepentant probably almost all their history. There's always been a remnant. And Abba still used them. You think Abba's going to change the way he does things now, especially as we are coming to the close of the time of the nations? The nations have rejected him. The majority of the world rejects him. And look at what's going on. That has gone on for the last 1,900 years. It's not just the trampling of Jerusalem. It is the hatred of the people of Yah. It is the hatred of Elohim. It is the hatred and rebellion against Abba's word. It is the hatred and rebellion against the commandments, the instruction, the Shema, everything that goes with it. And beloved, what are we seeing all over this world right now as what's going on in the Middle East is going on? These are just some pictures. I could probably show you pictures for the next 45 minutes. All over this world. This is New York and Boston and LA and France and London. All over the world, there are not millions, not hundreds of millions, billions of people that are on the side of Hamas, that are crying out for the Palestinian people and calling Israel immoral, calling Israel butchers, calling Israel apartheid. The nations do not want to give up Jerusalem, because that's what this fight is all about. It's about Jerusalem. It's about the Temple Mount. What's the name of this fight? The name of this campaign that Hamas has put out? It's called the Alaska Sword. I think it's called the Alaska Sword. It's called the Alaska something. I think it's Sword. Alaska is the mosque on the Temple Mount. It's about Jerusalem. It's about the trampling of Jerusalem, and they do not want to give it up. But there's a war going on, a spiritual war that is a physical war, and all sorts of other things all over our world as well. But this is going on. That's a picture of New York City, from the river to the sea. In other words, no Israel. Get rid of them. No more. Syria, Palestinia. No Judea. But there is a Judea. And just like Israel has said before, never again. Never again. That time is over. That time is over, and now Abba is using Judah. And we ought to start looking up if this is where we truly are. Guys, here's pictures of all over the world. Europe, that's Iraq. Look at that picture of Iraq. There's got to be better than a couple of million people out there. And it's not just going on in Iraq. It's going on every Middle Eastern country all over the world. These protests and riots against Israel, destruction of Israel, countries all over the world, people all over the world, hatred for the Jews all over the world. This is just other countries, other nations. Again, just look at those crowds. This is scary, because this isn't just in Beirut. This is in Brooklyn. This is in Manhattan. This is here. This is going on. And of course, there's all sorts of reports of all the things that are going on, and the stabbings, and FBI is putting out terrorism reports and all the rest of that stuff. Guys, it's going to get bad. If this is if we are at that point of the Ezekiel Gog Magog, then Abba's going to put a hook in their nose, and they're just going to keep coming. And this is not going to end. And even if it's not that time, this is not going to end. Because again, Judah has said, never again. Nazi Germany's not happening again. They're not going to allow what just happened 2 weeks ago to happen again without great reprisals. And this is going to expand, because this involves so many other countries. This is geopolitical. This is involved in so many other things. The Belt and Road Initiative from China, and connected with Russia, and what Israel and Saudi Arabia were going to do. They were going to build their own pipeline, their own thing, but that's probably blown out of the water now, which is probably Iran, who's behind the whole thing, wants all of this to happen. But that's geopolitical stuff. But it's all connected. Here's our college campuses: Harvard, Georgetown. Look at them. Get out of occupied Palestine. From the land to the sea. These are your average middle income to high income American students that are just in opposition. And there's not a whole lot we can do about it. These are our neighbors. This is the land that you and I live in. So to put a little bit of perspective on it, to give you a little bit of a picture of where we may be, because of the marvelous work that was done, and what Abba did to Jerusalem should be an example to us, that if Abba did that to Jerusalem because of their rebellion, and he tells us this will happen to the nations, is that what we're watching right now? We know there's a Jerusalem today. We know that Judah is in the land. Unrepentant, but they're in the land. Do they love Abba? Not all of them, but some of them do. Very, very much so. And what is Abba doing? He's using them. He's using them just like he has always used his people. And beloved, sooner or later, he's going to join Ephraim with Judah. And we ought to really realize in our minds what side of this we ought to be on. We are the house of Israel. Ephraim, scattered around, but we are the house of Israel. And we really got to come to grips with that. Anyway, that is the study for tonight. I hope that you guys enjoyed that. Go back and check out the notes, listen to it. I know it's kind of deep, but guys, this is what's happening. It's all around us. Don't be scared. Don't freak out. Just know that stay in Father. Do what you're supposed to do. Learn what you're supposed to learn. Understand what you're supposed to understand. Love what you're supposed to love. Be the people of Abba that we're supposed to be. Follow him. Follow his instructions. And this thing's going to work out the way it works out. And whatever comes our way, good or bad, the Master promised not a hair of our head will be lost. Doesn't mean we're not going to see some terrible times, but ultimately, in resurrection, we will live again. Guys, thank you so much for watching tonight. Again, I appreciate it. Don't forget, this upcoming Friday, there will be no Hidden Manna. Brother, again, like I said, Brother Max is away. And happy birthday to my niece there. Enjoy your day. Aside from that, guys, we're hoping that Jennifer has the baby. Yeah, we're rooting for you, Jennifer. Hopefully it'll come real soon. And our prayers are with you. So keep the faith there. Guys, have a wonderful rest of the evening. Don't forget to join us tomorrow morning for Morning Manna. We appreciate it. Again, hit that subscribe button. Support us. We really, really do need your support. You can go to LMC, and there's an app in there that you can help us out financially. We appreciate that. In the meantime, guys, have a great rest of the night. Yah bless and shalom.